Welcome back to a timey-wimey pod where we watch every episode of Doctor Who from 2005 onward. My name's Rebecca,
I'm Haley.
and today we are discussing Empire of Death, which aired June 21st, was written by Russell T Davies, and directed by Jamie Donahue. And it is the finale of the season.
I cannot believe we're here. It has gone by way too fast.
It really has. It's crazy that now we can look back on Ncuti Gatwa's first season as the Doctor.
And our second season of our podcast.
Yes! So that's so crazy. This is probably
I
the
know.
fastest we're gonna get through a season. Just
Oh,
because this is
1000%.
shorter than all the other seasons.
Yeah, for sure.
Are you ready for some fantastic facts?
Yes, I am.
Now, there's not a whole lot of super interesting facts right now just because we're recording only a few days after the episode came out. But I was watching the behind the scenes video on the Doctor Who YouTube channel. Go watch it. They talked about how they used VR, virtual reality, to sketch out Sutekh and how Sutekh would look and fit in unit. And it was so, the way they showed it was really cool. And I just thought that was interesting. So definitely go check that out.
That does sound really interesting.
And then my next fantastic fact, and actually my last fantastic fact,
Oh my gosh, you weren't kidding.
yeah, I really didn't find much. Sorry, y'all. But at the end of the episode, the very end, when Ruby says, "I love you" to the Doctor and leaves, the Doctor was originally supposed to say it back, and then they cut it out. Because the Doctor can never tell anyone he loves them, apparently. It's just illegal for some reason.
I simultaneously understand and do not understand why the Doctor can never say I love you to a companion, to someone the Doctor cares about.
I know. It's painful. Are you ready to just jump into the episode?
I am, and I truly have no clue what your opinion of this episode is because we've not talked about it at all. And so I'm very curious.
Where do we start?
I don't know. Should we start with our overall thoughts on how we feel about the finale before we get into it?
Yes.
So, my overall thoughts on this episode is very much a mixed bag of things. There's a lot of things I have problems with, questions about that just haven't been answered. But at the same time, it was an enjoyable watch. I enjoyed rewatching it a second time before this podcast episode, but it's not my favorite finale. And I know that's kind of a general consensus, but I don't want it to seem like I'm going with the crowd because I'm not. Like, this is just how I feel about it.
That's so fair. There's a lot of really valid issues people have with this episode because, yeah, a lot of things do not get resolved in a satisfying way. That being said, I've already accepted the way things have been wrapped up and resolved. And I think that's just because overall I do really like this episode. I think Ncuti Gatwa is really strong as the Doctor in this episode. Millie Gibson is just so good in every scene. She's such a good actress. I can't get over it. Bonnie Langford was great as Mel. And there's definitely some issues I have that we'll get into throughout the episode. And I agree, it's not my favorite finale by far. It's definitely not my favorite RTD finale. But overall, I like it. I really love in the beginning of the episode when Mel and the Doctor are getting on the scooter and she says, "Hop on, cowboy." I just think that's hilarious.
Yeah, that was really sweet. I want to know your thoughts on the whole death cloud because at first, when Kate died, I was feral. You do not understand. I was so upset and I was like, Kate of all people? But then the whole world died and that makes sense because of who Sutekh is. So I don't know what I was expecting there, but the death of Kate just took me so off guard. But once,
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Flood died, Cherry died, Carla died, I was like, oh, all of this is getting resolved. There's no way all of these characters as a whole are going to be dead indefinitely. So it felt like the stakes weren't as high as some previous finales. And I know that's everyone has a different preference with that, but it just was a little bit of a letdown. But it was so really visually interesting to see.
This episode is so Avengers Infinity War coded and Avengers Endgame coded. Because at the end of Avengers Infinity War, half the universe becomes dust and they die.
Oh,
And then in Avengers Endgame, they come back. um, so it was literally, I think I even text you, even though I know you haven't seen the Avengers movies. I was like, oh, it's Avengers Infinity War. Uh, Essentially, the exact same thing happens where someone comes in and a godlike figure comes in and kills a half or more of the universe. So that was kind of funny, to be honest. Kate dying really did take me out. It was also just like all happening so fast. Like everyone just became dust so quickly and like almost without, I don't want to say without warning, but it just happened so quickly. And yeah,
mm-hmm.
Kate, even though I knew like, okay, this is all, everyone's gonna come back, it was very painful for her to go. And I like, what she said at the end and telling the doctor to fix it. And then we have Mrs. Flood with Cherry.
We do have Mrs. Flood, and I wrote down exactly what she said verbatim because it made zero sense when I was watching it the first time, zero sense when I watched it again, and zero
Yep.
sense. Still, I have no clue what she even means. But the dust, like the death wave, is coming to them. Mrs. Flood is with Cherry back at the flat, and the Mrs. Flood asks Cherry if she believes in the power of prayer. And Cherry was like, yeah, of course. And then Mrs. Flood is like, then inform your maker. I will come to storm down his gates of gold and seize his kingdom in my true name. I'm sorry, you tiny little woman. I'm so, so sorry it ends like this. I had such plans. End quote. Plans for what?
I kind of give up on trying to figure out who Mrs. Flood is, especially after this episode. I like theories. It's never what we think, or it's exactly what we think. So for now on, I'm just saying that Mrs. Flood is the master. Because everything she's saying is very master coded. Like, I will come back in my true name. Like, I had such plans. And then, even at the end, her saying, oh, clever boy. Like, it just was all so master slash missy coded. So that's my running theory. It's probably just gonna be the master. Except I don't actually think it's the master. But I give up. I give up.
I know exactly what you mean because I was literally going to say the same exact things. I'm not even kidding. Because her, like, saying specifically, I had such plans, such a master
Mm-hmm.
thing to say. And, like, the way she said it is just so master coded. I have no thoughts, no theories on who she truly is, no clue. Her at the end of this episode was so confusing and took me so
So
off
weird.
guard. And I'm here along for the ride with Mrs. Flood because
Mm-hmm.
like you said, after this episode, I'm kind of done having theories.
Yeah, I'm
For right
feeling
now, at least.
a little jaded, a little slighted, a little
Same.
tricked, a little teased.
Exactly.
I love the moment when Sutekh shows up in the time window. That was all very spooky. And I love the way he moves the TARDIS. And then we see like a flashing of a bunch of different moments. We see a clip of Sarah Jane, and we see a flash of Susan. And then we see a bunch of clips of the TARDIS from all different moments in the show. One specifically, we see a moment of the TARDIS at Bad Wolf Bay from Journey's End.
Russell knew what he was doing. He did it specifically for us. I don't
Yeah.
care that he doesn't know who we are. So,
Specifically to
that
paint us.
to paint us. If you guys are new listeners, we mention Rose Tyler every chance we get, and Rose Tyler is Bad Wolf, and Bad Wolf Bay is Rose Tyler Bay. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a shout out to Rose. And while all of these pictures and like clips are flashing on the screen that 15 is holding, we find out Sutekh has been basically holding onto the TARDIS since Pyramid of Mars in
Mm-hmm.
1911. So since then, since the Classic Who episode, he's been there through it all. Through 2005, through David Tennant, through Matt Smith, through the
Through
Flux.
through the flags. From the fourth doctor, the fifth doctor, the sixth doctor, the seventh doctor, the eighth doctor, the war
Yeah.
doctor, the time war, all of it. He's been here this entire time, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, which means he was hanging onto the TARDIS the same time Jack Harkness was hanging onto it through the vortex.
Yeah. And there's so many other moments too where people will just be like sitting on the TARDIS. So it's does it make sense? No, but like
No.
I get it. It doesn't make sense that it would have taken so long for him to like reveal himself and get this strong. But okay.
Yeah, this is the part I'm really low-key annoyed about because there's just it makes zero sense and there's no like solid reason why. So like is the reason why Sutekh became powerful enough to finally like let go of the TARDIS and like actually become who he is in The Legend of Ruby Sunday and the Empire of Death, was it because of the salt at the edge of the universe, which happened after we saw Susan Twist in Wild Blue Yonder? Was it when Donna spilt coffee on the TARDIS at the end of the Star Beast? Like, when did Sutekh get the actual like wherewithal to finally be like, you know what, I'm gonna pop up and cause problems finally? Like,
I don't
why? Why
know.
such a long game? It would have made so much more sense if it was said he had been there since Wild Blue Yonder. Like he was just like hanging out at the edge of the universe.
Oh my gosh, it should have been revealed that he was the non-things in Wild Blue Yonder,
Stop! That would have hit so hard.
right? I do love the moment of the doctor promising to take him down, and he says, "With both of the hearts of the last of the Time Lords," like, and he's going to defeat him. I think that is just such a great moment, and I love the way Inchuti delivers that line.
I completely agree.
Okay, let's talk about the memory TARDIS.
So basically, the TARDIS is in the time window, and it's the TARDIS from Ruby Road. The memory TARDIS, we're just going to call it memory TARDIS. So the memory TARDIS is feeding off Ruby's memories. The more Ruby remembers, the stronger the TARDIS is. And because 15 is there, the TARDIS remembers 15. And that's how, like, all of like the past Doctor stuff is in the memory TARDIS. And then the TARDIS starts remembering herself.
Yeah.
And we get, honestly, one of my favorite shots of this entire season when 15, Mel, and Ruby go into the memory TARDIS and just seeing all of it. I love it. It is a
It's
fan's dream come true.
it's so cool. It's like one of those like old I Spy books where you had to like find all the
Yeah.
things. Okay, I want to talk about because there's so much in here from like every era of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And I want there's so much we could be talking about all the Easter eggs for days, but I want to talk about some of the things I noticed. We see both 11 and pieces of 11 and 10's console and their chairs, which bring back chairs in the TARDIS. I'm very passionate about that. um,
Yes.
we see a Fez sitting on what looks like to be one of the Toclafane balls from
Stop. I
The Sound
missed
of the
both of
Drums.
those.
It's very like in the background. You really have to like squint to see it. We see K9, obviously the fourth doctor's scarf, 4D glasses, Amy's dolls of her and the doctor from the Big Bang series 5, whatever. Oh, we see Donna's jumper or her sweater from the 60th at one point. And one of my favorite additions is the mini 13's TARDIS, just like in the middle of the floor.
Yeah, it's so cute. I'm going to share some of the Easter eggs I noticed.
I'm ready.
So, okay, so this first Easter egg I have to mention, and this was actually in the behind the scenes video. I didn't see
Mhm.
this in the episode, but there's the missing posters of Rose Tyler from Aliens in London and World War III two-parter
Yes.
from the 2005 series. So that's such a fun shout out. There's red heels that are river
Mm-hmm.
songs.
Yes.
There's also the mask from Girl in the Fireplace, if you're familiar with that episode. There is also the Seventh Doctor's question mark
Yes.
outfit, which is so cool. I love that that's in there. There's a bunch of TARDIS keys I noticed
Yeah,
by
I
the
saw that
entrance.
too. And like all the sonic screwdrivers.
Mhm. There's the mini jukebox, there's the jelly babies, and also, if you guys know the caroler sign from the Husbands of Ever song, that's in there as well. There's so many in the memory TARDIS, and it's so fun to literally pause frame by frame and play I Spy with it.
No, I love it. It's so cool. Hats off to the set designers and graphic
Mhm.
designers and everyone who worked on that. It's an actual work of art and it should actually be in a museum. I love Mel's reaction to seeing Colin Baker's coat, and then later she's holding
Yes.
the question sweater. I was just so sweet.
So incredibly sweet.
If you could have two people in a Tales of the TARDIS episode, who would you want?
Ooh, okay. Um, Two very different options. One of these, not everyone's going to agree.
Ooh,
Okay, so I would have Rose and the Ninth Doctor.
exactly what I was gonna say.
Or I would have 12 and Bill because justice for our girl Bill.
Justice for our girl Bill. Yeah, I agree. I was also gonna say Amy and 11 because ugh,
Yes.
they just need that closure. They need that goodbye.
They really, really do.
So let's talk about the references to 73 yards in this episode.
Yeah. I'm confused.
Me too. Okay, so I don't really understand how what the perception filter really has to do with Susan Twist. Like I get it, but I don't. And we find out the TARDIS perception filter is 73 yards. And like Ruby says it, and the doctor's like, how do you know that? And then later we see Roger Ap William, and they're talking about the DNA stuff, even though we never saw that in 73
Mhm.
yards. What are your thoughts?
I also am confused. I was like, okay, why are we seeing a clip from 73 yards we haven't seen before? I'll talk more about like the whole 2046 DNA thing when we get there in a moment. So how I understood it is that Susan Twist wasn't related to the perception filter. Susan Twist was more like the TARDIS like created her and spit her out everywhere Ruby and the doctor went. And that the
Right.
perception filter, actually I don't know. I don't know, actually. I don't know.
Yeah. I was a little confused. I don't know.
Yeah, it's
But
confusing.
I thought when that first said 73 yards, I was like, "Oh, like it's connected, like where something's going to happen."
Yeah.
And then it didn't?
Yeah, like it is, but it isn't. And I'm kind of like, are we
Yeah.
gonna see Roger Epke William again? Like,
Maybe. And it was so interesting. Later, we're in 2046, and 15 is like, I was here for the downfall of Roger William. And it's like, is this the timeline in which Ruby was the downfall? Or is that a different, like, what is happening? What is going on?
I don't think it was the Ruby timeline because the doctor mentions like it was the health department and it was like a whole overflow. Sorry,
Mm.
not overflow. I misspoke. Overthrow. I also want to see this episode where there's the overthrow of Roger William if it is indeed different from the 73 yards timeline. Like, I want that.
Yeah. I'm really curious to see which aspects of Ruby's story will continue into next season. Because obviously, Mrs. Flood, she's coming back. We're seeing her again. I feel like everything with her family is mostly resolved.
RTD did say that there's more to come, like, about her family.
Hmm.
But I don't know after, like, this finale if he's just saying that to keep the interest up.
If he's like, we'll see them, they'll be doing stuff.
I don't know. I don't trust RTD at all
I
anymore with
know.
whatever he says.
The Twitter memes after this episode had me cackling. Everything about Ruby Road and Sutekh. Literally, I was dying on Twitter the next day.
Everyone is so funny. There's so many memes of like the most dramatic thing happening in a Doctor Who story, and it's just a picture of like Sutekh just off watching it all happen. And it's just really funny. Search it up if you haven't already. I will say that is like a really big redeeming thing for this episode is the amount of memes that have now
Yeah,
transpired.
I love everyone taking the moment. I was named after a road out of context.
Yes.
It's so funny.
Yes. But yeah, the memes are great. So going back to kind of all of them in the memory TARDIS, I do want to talk about the 2046, but like I said, we'll get there. Um, there's this really profound moment where 15 has just realized the impact like the death wave has had. Like it's not just affecting all of Earth, it's affecting every place he has ever stepped foot on, every single planet, which I love how distressed he is specifically of the Ood sphere
He's
being
so upset about
destroyed.
the Ood.
And I'm like, same, because we
Yeah, me
love
too.
the Ood here on this podcast.
Yeah. And he probably helped the Ood more than any other civilization he's helped because they were
Mm-hmm.
really, I mean, they were enslaved and then they got to have their beautiful planet and their Ood sphere.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Sorry. Okay, I need to stop talking about Oods before I go on a rant about how much I love them.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, 15 is realizing like his worst fear that he kind of mentioned in the church on Ruby Road where he's like maybe I'm the bad luck. Like he's
Mhm.
realized like oh, that's actually true. Like I've literally brought disaster everywhere I've ever been throughout my entire life. Sutekh has unleashed his power. He's killing everything in his path. And 15 just has this moment where like he's realized all of this, said all of this, and he's completely shattered and he just lets out like the most guttural scream that is full of so much anguish and pain. And Chudy did such a beautiful job at conveying all of these many emotions. And this, for me, is a standout scene for him, his doctor, his portrayal of the doctor. And it was just a really emotional scene.
One of the highlights of this episode for sure. I love specifically when he says, I thought it was fun. And it just, oh, it's so heartbreaking. And I find the concept that all the doctor's travels, all like his running and everything he was doing that he thought was fun, that he thought was helping people, was just slowly destroying the universe because now all those places have been destroyed by Sutekh. And that I found that to be really heartbreaking and
Mm-hmm.
fascinating.
Absolutely. And then we get this scene where he stopped by this unknown planet, and we later learn in this episode it was called Agua Santina. Sorry, Agua Cantina. But he stops on this unknown planet to get a spoon,
Yes, spoon.
which I kind of love. It just fits the doctor's personality to be like, I need a spoon to save the universe. Like, it just tracks,
Mhm.
honestly. But
Also, the kind woman I just have to mention is Claire from Fleabag. So, love seeing her. I
um,
do quickly want to mention it made me so sad when Ruby was like, "Can't we just go get my mom?" And he was like, "No."
Yeah. He was like,
Like,
Ruby, not now.
not now,
Please.
Ruby. Like, we could just go get, like, I don't understand. I'm with Ruby. Like, why can't we just pop in? For what? But
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, I'm kind of confused a little bit because when they go to 2046, Ruby's like, but it's destroyed, it's gone. And he's like, no, it's preserved in death because I was there. So technically, he could have gone back to get Ruby's mom. So, like, I kind of
Yeah.
agree with you there. It's a little confusing, a little bit of flawed logic there. But going back to the kind woman who gives the doctor the spoon, this scene for me was so incredibly heartbreaking. Like,
It
this made me
was.
cry because this woman admits to this doctor like she's so tired and she can't remember anything and she's forgetting all of these details and all of these memories, and she tells him that they found out like the death wave has gone back through generations, like from child to mother, and she has a little like
Bassinet.
yeah, bassinet where her baby should have been, and she's like, I think my baby has died and I completely forgot. And it's just such a sad scene.
It's so sad. And she's so kind. And I really thought this planet was Gallifrey when we first got there. I was just like, this has to be, it's something. Of course it wasn't. Which
Yeah.
I actually do like, because I don't hate the sentiment that ordinary people are sometimes like the most important.
Hmm.
And I liked seeing her and her baby at the end of the episode. That was really sweet. But yeah, this was absolutely heartbreaking. And hearing her talk about how she thinks there used to be an opera house, and maybe she worked there, maybe she went there, and she used to have a husband and he was tall, but that's all she remembers. I do wish they explained a little more about how why memory was also dying, because even Mel, for she forgets for a second that in the past she and the doctor met Einstein. So I just wish that was explained, and I don't think it ever was.
Well, I think it was kind of explained like everything's dying. So, of course, memory is dying. And for whatever reason, some things are dying slower than others.
Not yeah,
That's,
that's yeah.
I actually thought low key this was going to be like Ruby's birth mom. And like she was just like not going to come back to life. And that's why she was left at the church on Ruby Road. But
I did kind of think that too for a moment.
and then she turns into dust, and
Hmm.
15 says, I'm gonna save the universe with a spoon. And the most emotional, like full of so much genuine emotion. It's just, when you think about the line out of context, it's kind of funny.
It is, but I love the way this line is delivered, and I found it
Me
really
too.
sweet. Him promising her to save the universe with the spoon.
Absolutely. And then he goes back to the memory TARDIS, and Mel is so tired and exhausted. And Sutekh, we find out, we forgot to mention this, but Sutekh just wants the tea on Ruby. He's like, you're a mystery. I don't know what's up with you. I need to know before I kill you. So that's why they're all still alive. But because Sutekh wants the tea, he's trying to possess Mel, which Mel is technically already dead, I guess. Even though
Yeah.
Sutekh is trying to possess her?
Like, how long has she been dead this whole
Yeah,
time? Was she like,
exactly.
when did she that was very confusing too, because I was like, okay, when did she become possessed? When did she die? Like, what?
Yeah, very
Yeah.
confusing.
I do quickly, going back to the scene on the memory TARDIS, there's a few little Easter eggs I want to point out. The doctor's talking about how every place and every time he landed is dying. He specifically says 1066, 1989, 1999, and 2005. 1066, that refers to a First Doctor episode from 1965 called The Time Endler. 1999, that refers to the TV movie with Paul McGann. And of course, 2005 refers to him meeting or Girl Rose.
I love the shout outs.
Yeah, it made me emotional to hear 2005.
No, me too. At first, I thought he misspoke and was referencing 2004 with Ruby. And then I was like, oh my gosh, no, he literally actually means 2005.
Yeah, he's thinking about 2005. I wonder, it probably doesn't mean anything because if this episode taught us one thing, it's that sometimes things don't mean anything at all. But I wonder why those specific years and those specific, like why Russell wanted to mention the Time Endler and the 1990s movie and the beginning of the revival, if that means anything. Or if he just wanted to specifically shout out those years.
But yeah, interesting.
Also on the memory TARDIS, we see a clip of Sarah Jane Smith and the Fourth Doctor, and Ruby says,
Yeah.
"Who is that?"
And 15's just like, oh, they used to travel in the TARDIS.
They used to travel. Like, just say that's you, my man. Just say that's literally you. And then he's
Like,
like,
it's not
"That's how
that
I met
hard.
Mel." Like, what? And we already explained regeneration to Ruby in the last episode.
Yeah.
So just be like, that used to be me. And that was my good friend, Sarah Jane Smith.
Mm-hmm.
I did see Elizabeth Sladen's daughter. She posted on Instagram after the episode aired that she loved, seeing her mom in this episode and
Aww.
that her mom would have loved the 15th Doctor. And I just thought that was so sweet.
That is so sweet. And I truly think that Sarah Jane, if Elizabeth Sladen was still here with us, that she would have been in this episode alongside everyone else.
Oh my gosh, that would have been so good.
Yes. And then they all head off to 2046 because 15's like, Ruby, you can find your mom. They have compulsory DNA. Like, let's go. And I just want to ask, is this truly how we find out Ruby's mom? Because Davina McCall couldn't find anything. Ruby's
Yeah.
mom is a nurse. Like, it's not like she's like moved away. It's not like she's like a really random job. Like, she's a nurse.
I think it's more just that it kind of makes sense when you realize that she hid the pregnancy. She didn't tell anyone. She didn't tell, they mentioned like her stepdad. She didn't even tell Ruby's father. So which leads me to believe she didn't go to the hospital. So there'd be no birth certificate, nothing like that. No, nothing to lead them to Louise, who's Ruby's mom. So that it kind of makes sense, but it is kind of like, really, like Davina couldn't find her at all. Like, how do they normally try to find people?
Yeah, my thing is more with the DNA than anything else. It's just like usually you find like even a distant familial match, like a cousin,
Yeah.
an aunt, an uncle. So I don't know
They
if it
should
was
have
just like a
done
bunch of
23andMe.
yeah, except Davina probably did. That's the thing. She probably did. So like I don't know, but nonetheless, they go to 2046 and 15 helps Ruby find like the DNA results. But before we all learn the results, Mel is like,
Yeah.
Sutekh has control of me. Let's go back to Unit HQ.
Yeah, and they just like show up there immediately. I did really like the moment where the doctor said, "Oh, I loved you, Mel," and then Sutekh says, "And what has love ever brought you?" Or I don't know, whatever he says. That I did like those
Exactly.
lines.
Same. That
Yeah,
was a painful line.
yeah, he was really calling him out, being like, "Everyone you loved has died, and I've seen it."
You're so right. Also, there's like an intense scene, like as Ruby's like inserted her DNA into the computer, the Carol of the Bells starts playing, snow starts falling. We're like, what's going on?
I
And
know we're
that
not
is
even
another question I
acknowledging
have.
this now.
Like, the explanation that, that night is so raw and so open because, time is memory and memory is time. That still doesn't make sense to me, okay?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. And if you go back and watch The Devil's Court, there's so many lines in
Mm-hmm.
that episode that don't make sense. Like, she has a secret song in her, and she has powers, like the oldest one. Like, what? What?
Yeah. So, Russell, I'm so confused
Why did everyone have to get DNA tested or give their DNA? What was that about?
because
What did that have to do with
be-
the nukes?
I agree with you. That doesn't track with nukes. Like, why do you need everyone's DNA?
It would have been way more interesting if that was one of the things that they mentioned in 73 yards, but it wasn't mentioned once.
No, not even like a little crumb.
Yeah. So it's just like, why did we have to why? Why what does 73 yards have to do with all this? Why did it have to be Wadrap William? Like, why 2046?
Exactly. And it honestly makes me a little bit irritated that it was so hard for Ruby to find her birth mom, only for them to be able to easily find the information in 2046. Like, why? Why? I can go
Yeah.
on and on. This just makes me so upset.
It's pretty crazy.
But they do arrive at unit headquarters, and
Mhm.
honestly, they kind of had me tricked. I did not think Ruby and
Same.
15 had a plan.
No, me either. I love that scene. Millie
Mm-hmm.
Gibson did so well. Her performance, she got me. And I love her just dropping the tablet, and oh, it's so good. Everything she says is amazing.
Her going to Sutekh and 15 being like, no, Ruby, don't tell him. And Ruby goes anyway with the screen. And then, right as she's saying, I don't understand. I don't understand how this is the answer. Like, how this is my mom. And she's just like, shatters the screen and is like, you big god of nothing. And she grabs a rope, thrusts it around Sutekh's neck, and 15 gets an intelligent glove, and they pull Sutekh off the TARDIS. And then 15 remote controls the TARDIS by a whistle. And honestly, it's unhinged. I did like that part.
Yeah, I kind of liked it too. Like, it was kind of silly, but I also liked that, the TARDIS is still in there. Like, she's still fighting. So I like that.
Mm-hmm.
The whistle, she's helping out. The whole bringing deaf to deaf thing, I also was like, okay, that doesn't
Yeah,
totally make
same.
sense.
Like,
Um, but that's fine. I'm fine with it. I've
yeah,
accepted it. I am hoping that this brings back Gallifrey.
that's exactly what I was just gonna say.
Just bring it back and keep it in that little time bubble that we put it in the 50th.
Exactly. I would love that dynamic to just like pop up once in a blue
Yeah.
moon.
Just like one day would be like, oh my gosh, that time with Sutekh, we brought back Gallifrey. Who knew? That was crazy.
Yeah, and then they go into the vortex, which I love how 15 just says, into the vortex. And they
Yes.
go. And this is a part that also doesn't make sense to me. They drag Sutekh into the vortex and leave him in there, and that's how he dies. But
Yeah.
wasn't that how he survived in the first place in like after Pyramids of Mars?
Yes. Um, that's exactly what happened. But I guess this time he just didn't latch on. And we did get to see him like dissolve, so that was nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't really understand why they would have tried that again when it didn't work the first time.
Yeah, same. But
I
15,
do
sorry.
love the visual effects of Sutekh in the time vortex. Like, I thought it looked really cool.
Yeah, that was cool. It's fun seeing visual effects like that, even if they're a little
Hmm.
cheesy. 15, though, like, in leaving Sutekh in the vortex, he kind of has a big moment as the 15th Doctor where
Hmm.
he tells Sutekh, now I must become a monster. And he lets go of Sutekh, and Sutekh dies. And I think something to remember is that at least in New Who since 2005, no matter the enemy, the Doctor still does not like. Yes, there's like a few episodes where circumstances are very charged and different, but for the most part, the Doctor does not like killing anyone, regardless of who the Doctor's enemy is. So for him to do this to Sutekh, even though he has killed in the past, it's still such a big monumental thing that you can see just really pains him because he knows what it's like to be the only one of his kind and to have all of his loved ones die. And granted, Sutekh is a different circumstance, but I think all of those conflicting emotions kind of were running at the same time in his mind when he was unleashing Sutekh into the vortex.
I completely agree. I love specifically when he says that he must bring life. Like that, he's like, that must be what I am. Like, I bring life. But now in this moment, he has to bring death to death. He has to bring Sutek to his death. And I think it's a really big moment for this doctor because he thought all these years, all that traveling, he's helping, he's bringing life places, but in actuality, he's been bringing death with him this whole time. Death has been his constant companion, literally riding on his back. And I hope they kind of explore more of that in the next season or the Christmas special.
I completely agree with you. I would like for this to be explored more, and I think it would honestly make more sense for it to be over the next season.
Definitely. And then we go back to units, and it's finally time to figure out who the heck is Ruby's mom. Something we've been wondering since Christmas Day 2023. It feels like we've been talking about it forever. And
Mm-hmm.
the answer, so many theories. There were countless theories. It was Clara, it was Rose, it was River, it was 13 somehow, it was Missy, it was the Master, it was Ruby doesn't have a
Sutekh.
mom. Yeah.
Ruby is her
Uh,
mom. Jenny's her
mhm.
mom.
Jenny's her mom. Kate's her mom. Like, oh, um, and no, her mom was just a 15-year-old girl who didn't live anywhere safe to have a baby, and now she's a nurse, and she was just an ordinary woman. And I do love the moment where Ruby says, she's so ordinary, and I love that for her, but I don't get it. Like, why her? Um, and yeah, it doesn't make sense. But I'm I'm mostly okay with it.
I don't mind that the reveal of Ruby's mom is that she's ordinary and ordinary people are important. I think we've had this storyline before, for example,
Hmm.
with Donna, and I've always really liked that storyline as long as it's used like in the right way. And for me, it's not so much that the reveal of her mom is the problem, it's everything else surrounding it, the
Agreed.
unanswered questions. Why did it snow so much? What about the song? What about everything Maestro said and everything we've kind of heard and led up to this point? That's my problem, and kind of the way the explanation that 15 gave Ruby after, where he was like, well, you see, like, that's how like everything starts. Every war, every religion, every love story. It's because someone believes someone else is important. And because you and like we all believe she was important, she was important. And that's how, she defeated Sutekh. For me, it's just the way the explanation was written that I more have a problem with, not so much the reveal that her mom was a 15-year-old girl who wanted the best for her baby and knew the only way to keep her safe was to drop her off at a church. So I don't know. How do you feel? Do you feel the same way or?
I feel like I'm mostly, yeah, no, I totally agree with what you're saying. Like everything, the build up, for all the build up we had for this to be the reveal is just kind of like, oh, okay. But the scene in the coffee shop is kind of what makes it all okay for me. That might
Me
be one of
too.
my favorite scenes of the entire show. First, I love the doctor and Ruby standing outside. And I hate at first when the doctor's kind of trying to convince her not to go and to just leave her mom. And I was like literally yelling at my screen watching this. I was like, no, like, don't do that. Go talk to her, go see her. And thankfully, Ruby does not listen to the doctor and she does go. Also, the casting for the mother, like, she and Millie literally have the same face. So
Mm-hmm.
props to casting. And just when they make eye contact and you see Louise slowly figuring out, like, she recognizes, or she like sees herself in Ruby, and then hears Ruby's name and Ruby says, that's me, I was named after a road. And her just saying, you left me where I was safe and I just want to say thank you. And her mom just crying and saying, I'm so sorry. And Ruby says, no, no, it's okay. Like, it is just so sweet. And you see the 19 years of pain and grief that this woman has carried with her. And Ruby and Carla and Cherry, they welcome Louise with such love. And they're not angry at her. And Ruby's just like, I'm okay. And I just want to thank you for that because you put me where I was staying. Oh, it's so good. I love it.
I do really love the whole perspective of Louise and how Ruby and how Cherry and how Carla have welcomed her with open arms. And while, yes, they may have mixed feelings, they're very welcoming. And I just love that it's a very positive portrayal of adoption. And I do agree with you. I had a really big problem with 15 trying to convince Ruby to like not go. That was a moment where I was
Yeah.
like, I don't know if that's like truly the doctor's character or if it was just the way it was written and it just came across icky. Like, I didn't like it, but I love the scene in the cafe. I love how Ruby, brings Louise home and introduces her to Carla and Cherry, and they are looking at photos, and Ruby tells Louise all about her adventures with the doctor.
Yeah.
I think that is so incredibly sweet. But then we get to Ruby joining the doctor back in the TARDIS, and she asks where they're going next. And 15 can kind of tell she's saying that because she doesn't want to let him down.
This scene is so sad. And you see the doctor, trying to be brave for her, trying to let her go because she has this whole family now that she has to figure out. She finally found her mom and she's going to go meet her dad. And it's just so sad because when we meet these two, they're both kind of like, they don't know where they came from or who their families are. And now Ruby found it and she figured it out, and the doctor is left alone on the TARDIS again. And it's so painful. And their whole conversation is so sad. And you just see the doctor, trying to be brave, trying to be brave, trying to be cool about it all. And when Ruby asks, like, will I ever see you again? The doctor says yes, and then she's like, well, you didn't even go see your own granddaughter.
Ouch, by the way. And honestly, I'm so glad Ruby called him out for that.
Yeah, me too.
I'm really glad about that. But I love how he says, I mean, he basically says, like, you're right, but because of you, I've talked about my family in a way I haven't before with other people, and maybe I will see Susan one day. And, I've made all of this progress and done all of these things because of you, Ruby. And I just love that moment. And it makes me emotional to think about it. And that
Hmm.
even though this season we've mentioned before, we feel like it's too short, like not enough
Yeah.
episodes, you still understand their bond as best friends and how much fun they genuinely have with one another. And when Ruby is walking out at the end and just says I love you to him and he's just standing there. Ugh.
Ugh, it's so ugh. Yeah, it hurts. I love the doctor admitting that, it was a mistake that he never went back for Susan and
Yeah.
that hopefully we'll see her again one day. Though I do feel like it's very easy, like just go where you last saw her, but fine,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. First off, I love what she's wearing in the scene. She looks great. And I love what he's wearing. It's the classic outfit from the church on Ruby Road. Might be one of his best outfits. I don't know. Oh, and I just love, like you said, when she says I love you, and then how she kind of just quickly walks off the TARDIS because she has to. It was very reminiscent of Martha Jones. It's very different kind of emotions in those scenes, but both in the scene and when Martha leaves the TARDIS, they leave because they have to, because there's now stuff on Earth keeping them there, things they need to do, their family that they need to spend time with and take care of. And you could see how upset Ruby was because he really is her best friend. And it's heartbreaking. And I already miss her and I already want to see her again.
Me too. And well, we know she's coming back next season.
Mm-hmm.
It at least appears it's not full time like she was this season. And I miss them
Yeah,
already.
me too.
And then there's this shot of Ruby and Carla and Cherry and Louise, and the camera pans out, and suddenly we're on the rooftop with Mrs. Flood, and Mrs. Flood is wearing a white coat, like wearing it
Yeah.
like a hood, has an umbrella like she's Mary Poppins or something, and she's like, and that's how the legend of Ruby Sunday ended. But life goes on, doesn't it? But what happens to the mysterious traveler known as the Doctor? And with the turn of the music, she says, I'm sorry to say, his story ends in absolute terror. Night night.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Huh? What? Absolute
What?
terror? His story ends in absolute terror?
Like, are we
Huh?
talking about the next season? Are we talking about, like, when he inevitably regenerates?
No.
What you were not going to really even think about? But, like, what do you mean?
If we have to deal with another season of the doctor's dying, I'm going to be pissed. Because we've done that numerous times. That was season 6. That was season 9. Like, no, I'm not doing this again.
Yeah,
We'll see.
we shall see.
Do we have any Reddit comments for this episode?
We do have a few. So, this first comment had me laughing. On the Doctor Who subreddit, user external organ said, in all caps, why would a 15-year-old have a black cloak?
Y'all don't understand what it means to be a 15-year-old girl.
And then user past-future 3968 said, typical 2004 goth behavior. Trust me, I'm the same age.
So true.
But you're so right. Unless you've been a 15-year-old girl, you don't understand what it's like.
The mind of a 15-year-old girl cannot be explained.
There's no psychologist in the world that can decode a 15-year-old girl's brain. There just isn't.
Nope, there's not.
User Give Me a Break 432 said, to me, it felt like the conclusion to a full season of RTD calling out the fan base. There have been multiple times where he's outright taunted what the fans would predict, and this is the icing on the cake. How many threads have been dedicated to this specific topic? It didn't actually matter who her mom was. We were going to talk about it regardless because it was a mystery. Sutekh, it turns out, was along for the ride. He was watching the events from the Doctor's perspective, so he also had no way of knowing who Ruby's mom is. He basically represented the audience. He put so much significance on it, but it didn't actually matter who Ruby's mom was. For him, it was used as a means to trick him. I actually love that conclusion. I think it's the strongest part of the episode. I can forgive the whole pointing thing because she was a 15-year-old girl being dramatic, and maybe she saw the doctor and hoped he would take the hint. This brings Ruby's companion Exit. Not a huge fan of it, but she'll be back, just not as a main companion. Overall, I actually think this was a stronger episode than the last one. I'm happy with the conclusion to the season and look forward to the next one. Yeah, I don't know if I fully agree with this user's interpretation of everything.
Yeah, the host that Sutekh is like also needs to know who Ruby's mom is because we don't know. That's a little like, why this? Of all the mysteries we've had on this show, why is this? You're not curious about who the doctor is, but because of the whole timeless child thing, like you got to know who's Ruby's. Like, why is that the thing?
Exactly.
It almost would have been more interesting if there was like a specific person that Sutekh thought Ruby was. Like, she's
Ooh,
the
yeah.
lost child of blah blah blah. She's the god of blah blah blah. And then it was like, JK, she's just ordinary. Like, that would have been way more interesting.
You know what? I completely agree with you. This last comment I have is from the user Whirlpool_Galaxy. They said, up until the very end, I thought there was going to be a shocker reveal that Louise Miller was someone the Doctor created with a TARDIS's perception filter like Sutekh created Susan Triad because 15 learned Ruby's true parentage and decided it was too horrifying for her to confront.
Oh
His
my
reactions when she
gosh.
wasn't I know, his reactions when she wasn't looking seemed to point to it, and even Ruby remarked on it being far too ordinary. If what we got is all there is to it, then what a profoundly unsatisfying end to this plot. So I do agree it's unsatisfying. I feel like this is really dark though.
Yeah, that's really crazy. I don't think that's gonna be a thing. I think, who they said Ruby's parents are, these are her parents, but that is dark.
Yeah. We don't know I mean, we know her dad's name, but we don't truly know if he's a good guy or not.
We'll see. So, thinking about the story as a whole, The Legend of Ruby Sunday and the Empire of Death, what is the heart of this story for you?
I would say that either ordinary people are important, or I would say memory is important. I don't
Mm,
know.
I
Because,
like
we
that.
get them, yeah, we get the memory TARDIS. We find out about the death wave taking away memories. So just that memory is important.
And we have the whole thing with the time window and the memory
Yeah.
of like what happened on the Church of Ruby Road being so powerful. So I like that. I think, yeah, I agree. Who is the star of this story for you?
It's really hard for me, honestly, to choose between 15 and Ruby. So I'm going to say a cop out and say both of them.
Fair enough. I I'm gonna say I'm gonna give it to Mel. I mean, obviously, like I agree, the Doctor and Ruby, they are of course the real stars, but Mel in this two-parter, everything that she was doing last week with Susan Triad, and then her scenes in this episode were so great. So she gets the star.
She was wonderful in these two episodes and every time we've seen her, and I hope we continue to see her.
Me too. Well, with that said, that is our wrap of Empire of Death.
And next week we will be back, but we will be talking about all of our favorite things from this season of Doctor Who. It's going to be our bonus episode next week.
Yes, we're going to be ranking all the episodes in this season, talking about our favorite moments, talking about our favorite outfits and characters. So definitely listen. You don't want to miss it. And then after that, we're taking a 2-week holiday, enjoying summer, enjoying vacation, friends, family. Then we will be back and we'll be jumping into series 2 with David and Billy, and we couldn't be more excited.
So incredibly excited. You guys don't understand. It's going to be so much fun. So don't forget to follow us on any and all podcast platforms you listen to podcasts on.
And follow us on Instagram and TikTok at TimeyWimeyPod.
And email us at timeyWimeyPod@gmail.com.
And we will see you next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.